Welcome to the professional life of a college writer. First things first, it's important to develop an academic style. The majority of papers you write in college should be written in a formal academic style. Therefore, usage of personal pronouns like I, me, my, we, and us are not acceptable. It's important to not let your opinion detract from the message. It's also important to focus on the topic itself and let your attitude be revealed indirectly. You should also not use contractions. Contractions are words like can't, don't, it's. It's best to use the full form of the word, cannot, will not, do not, it is. Technical terms and jargon can confuse the general audience, and it's best to steer clear of them. Cliches can pose problems as well because not everybody understands their meaning. The whole point is to communicate your idea in a clear and concise manner, and using technical terms that not everybody knows can be distracting and confusing. It's also important to discuss the active and passive voice. Active is when the subject performs the action. The verb is stronger. Passive voice can appear weak because the verb's action is directed backwards. That being said, sometimes passive voice can be effective, particularly in an argument, and you'll learn that in the video we're going to watch in just a moment. It's also important to know when to use formal or informal writing. If you are writing an email to your friend or texting your friend, it is okay to use informal language. However, if you begin texting your professor or emailing your professor or doing a professional blog for your job, it's best to use formal academic language. It's also important to note that you need to use the required format of your professor. If he or she prefers MLA, then use MLA or APA. APA is often used in science, and we will be using it when we write our research paper. But for the majority of the papers in this class, we will stick with MLA. So we're going to move on to a video by Sean McLeod. He's an online college writer, and he'll add some tips to formal writing.
It's important for you to use language that's suitable for the task or the assignment that you've been given. Okay, so there's a time for conversational spoken language, and there's a time for more formal written language. Now, with an academic essay in university or college, you should be using formal writing. Okay, so I want to give you some tips on how to make your writing more formal and more academic. First of all, you shouldn't be using contractions, words like can't and won't. Give the full form, cannot, will not. Also, you shouldn't be using slang or informal expressions like stuff or adjectives like awesome. It's not formal enough. Also, you should avoid the use of the first person, meaning I, me, and my. Now, students sometimes think, how can I express my opinion if I can't say I think or in my opinion? But look at this example. I think cell phones should be banned in classrooms. If I simply remove I think, then you can see that cell phones should be banned in classrooms is my opinion because I've written it in my essay. Also, you want the reader to be focusing less on you and more on your ideas and your opinions. So removing yourself is a good way of achieving that idea of objectivity. Okay? Also, with me and my, you should avoid using personal examples, experiences from your life or things that happen to friends. Don't really have a place in academic writing. Also, you should try to avoid, in my opinion, you should avoid speaking or addressing the reader directly, meaning using the word you too much. In this example, if you want to succeed, you should follow this process. For me, it sounds too casual and too familiar. Using a pronoun like one is a little bit more general, and I think sounds a little bit more formal. So this is how I changed it. Following this process will increase one's chances for success. Same meaning, just a little bit more formal. Okay, also, try to avoid using overly emotional language. If the reader thinks you're being emotional, they may think you're being irrational, in which case they may not see your arguments as valid and start questioning your opinions. You also want to avoid overgeneralizations, meaning words like every, none, or all. If you look at this example, everybody knows that smartphones are useful. Now that's not entirely true. Even if there's one person on a mountain or in Antarctica somewhere that doesn't know about smartphones, that means that sentence is inaccurate, so avoid it. And the last of the list of things that you cannot do is use statistics without proper reference. Don't just put a percentage into your essay unless you can tell exactly where it came from. All right, now a couple things that you should do to make your writing more formal is using the passive voice. The passive voice in the impersonal passive, again, creates that objectivity. It removes you from your ideas, and it's quite successful. If you look at this example, it is believed by some that widespread use of technology in daily life is affecting the way people interact with one another. It is believed is a really useful way of reporting other people's ideas in a passive, formal way. If you want more practice with that, you can check out the video on the impersonal passive and passive voice. And last, try to use more academic vocabulary. Instead of a word like bad, you can use a word like harmful or detrimental. Help can be replaced by facilitate or foster. Things to think about. So when you're writing your essay, make sure when you're proofreading that the language you're using is suitable for the tasks that you've been given. All right? So for more practice with making your language more formal, follow the link at the end of this video.
All right, he had some really great ideas in there, particularly using the academic vocabulary. It is important to broaden our vocabulary and definitely use words that fit the meaning. In other words, using concise word choice. All right, let's talk a little bit about ideas and support. It's important to remember the basics. Organize around one idea. Make sure your paper consists of sentences that develop that main idea. Make sure each paragraph should also include a topic sentence, a supporting sentence, and a closing sentence. Each paragraph is just like a paper where you have an introductory sentence that includes the thesis and your main idea, and then the body, which are your supporting sentences, and then the closing sentence is simply your conclusion. If you organize each paragraph the same way you organize the body of your essay or your paper, you should be good to go. The paper and each paragraph should also be a concise unit of thought, meaning everything should follow the main idea.
Before you write an essay, it's important to understand basic essay structure. Now, every essay has the same core structure regardless of the kind of essay you're writing. Now, an opinion essay, comparison-contrast essay, or narrative essay will all have slight differences, but the basic structure will always be the same. It will consist of three main parts. You have your introduction, body, and conclusion. The introduction and conclusion will each be one paragraph, and the body can be any number of paragraphs, depending on the length of the essay you're writing. Now, the introductory paragraph can be split into three parts. The first part is what we call the hook, and all that means is the first sentence of your essay should engage the reader, grab their attention, and introduce the subject in an interesting way. Students often think that the best way to do this is to ask a question at the beginning of an essay, but that's overused, and I recommend that you do something else instead. I would highly recommend a strong statement or a surprising fact. After you've engaged the reader with a good opening sentence, you want to give some background information. Now that just means any information that's essential for the reader to have in order to understand your main idea or to understand the topic. So this could be context, like where and when. It could be a brief history of the topic, or it could be an explanation of why the topic is controversial to begin with, or why it's important. Okay, now once you've given the background information, it's time to give your thesis, which is the single most important sentence of your entire essay. It is always the last sentence of the introductory paragraph, and it is the main idea of your entire essay. After you've presented your thesis, you can then move on and write your body. Now the body paragraph or paragraphs is meant to support the thesis with development, such as argument, details, examples, description, narration, depending on the kind of essay you're writing. Now a longer essay may include expert opinion, quotations, secondary sources, that kind of thing. But obviously if you're writing an essay for a test or you're writing a short 250 to 300 word essay in class, you probably won't need to include secondary sources. After you've written a strong body, it's time to write your concluding paragraph. In the conclusion, you should summarize your main points and restate the thesis. It's important to think of the reader as a person with a very short memory. So at the end of your essay, you want to remind them what is your main idea. And then at the end, you also want to end your essay with as strong a statement as you started. So you want to make sure that the final comment or statement of your concluding paragraph is emphatic or interesting in some way. And that's the basic structure of an essay.
All right, points to remember. Review the ideas in your writing. Make sure that each point is logical, complete, and clear. Do you have a clear organizational pattern? Introduction, body, conclusion. Have you supported your thesis? And that's when we move on to checking for coherence. Use effective repetition when necessary. Use clear transitions to connect your thoughts and ideas. All sentences should support and expand the main idea. Utilize details, facts, statistics, explanations, analogies, definitions, quotations, analysis. All should support the thesis, and all, if they are secondary sources, be cited in either MLA or APA. Now we know that the writing process starts with generating ideas, planning, drafting, and then we move on to revision and edit, probably two of the most important components of the writing process. When we revise, we assess the overall approach, critique and improve the ideas, organization, and voice. Remember the 6 traits we spoke of last week. Strengthen unity and coherence. Give and receive feedback. So this is what we do when we peer edit. We also edit for style, and we help to revise the draft. We combine sentences for fluency. We expand sentences with details. We look at word choice, and we correct errors. All of these add up to having a great essay. But again, it's so important to have a peer editor. You need to read your essay at least 3 to 4 times before submitting it. One tool that I use often is a tool called Grammarly. And here's a little bit of a snippet for a commercial for Grammarly, and I think it's a great tool and everybody should use it.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague, or a post on Facebook that all your friends will see, or a paper for your English class that you just have to get an A on, or a resume for your dream job, or a message to your crush on a dating site. The point is that you write important things each and every day. And whether you're an English professor or an English learner, we all could use a second pair of eyes to help us make sure we're always putting our best foot forward. Enter Grammarly, a writing app developed by some of the world's leading linguists. Grammarly helps you find and fix grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors wherever you write, errors that other spelling and grammar checkers just can't catch.